She sat alone beneath the chandeliers, clutching her glass like a lifeline, when a stranger's voice brushed her ear, low, steady, and dangerous. "Pretend you're mine." And for the first time that night, her heart remembered how to beat. "Hi, my beautiful family. I have missed you all. Thank you so for sticking around with me. I truly appreciate your love and support. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The city glittered that night, a mosaic of laughter, champagne, and illusion. The Cole Foundation's annual Halloween Gala was the kind of event that made people pretend they were richer, happier, more in love than they truly were. Lila Bennett didn't belong there. She knew it the moment she walked through the arched glass doors. Her costume, a simple black dress with lace sleeves and a delicate thrift store mask, looked plain next to the parade of gold sequined gowns and designer masquerade suits. She tried to convince herself she didn't care. She'd come only because her best friend Mia worked in the PR team for Adrian Cole's conglomerate and had begged her to fill a last-minute seat. "It'll be good for you, Lila," Mia had said. "New faces. New energy." But standing now in the corner of a ballroom alive with flirtation and laughter, Lila felt smaller than ever. She sipped her champagne, too sweet, and let her eyes drift across the crowd. A man in a devil mask was proposing a toast, a woman dressed as Cleopatra was laughing too loudly, and a live band played smooth jazz that vibrated through the marble floor. And there, near the grand staircase, she saw her ex, Ethan. He wore a sleek vampire cape, his arm around a tall brunette who sparkled with the confidence Lila once tried to fake. Her throat tightened. She'd told herself she was over him, but heartbreak had a way of wearing new costumes too. She turned away, pretending to check her phone, pretending not to care. Pretending was easier than feeling invisible. Across the room, Adrian Cole scanned the crowd with the detached air of a man used to being watched. The billionaire behind the empire everyone envied, real estate, tech, media, stood at his own gala like a ghost among the living. He wore a black suit, his mask carved from midnight velvet, his jaw tense beneath it. To everyone else, he was charm incarnate. To himself, he was tired. Every year, he hosted this event to raise millions for charity. Every year, it felt more hollow. Behind the clinking glasses and rehearsed laughter was a silence he couldn't drown. It had been 2 years since her, the woman the tabloids blamed for scandal, the fiancé who died in a crash they said was his fault. Since then, he'd built higher walls. No one got close. Tonight, as he smiled and nodded through conversations that meant nothing, he caught a glimpse of something, or rather, someone, that broke the pattern. In the far corner, a woman in black sat alone, half in shadow. She didn't look like she belonged to the world of diamonds and gossip. She wasn't vying for attention. She wasn't pretending to enjoy herself. She was simply there. Quiet. Still. Real. For some reason, that stillness pulled at him more than any of the glittering smiles orbiting him all night. "Adrian," a voice purred beside him. He turned slightly. Vanessa Holt, heiress, PR queen, and perpetual flirt, was smiling up at him, a silver mask framing her red lips. "I was wondering when you'd finally come say hello," she teased, resting a manicured hand on his sleeve. "You've been avoiding me all evening." "I've been circulating," he replied politely. "Circulating?" She laughed. "You mean hiding. Don't tell me the great Adrian Cole is tired of his own party." He forced a thin smile. "Maybe." Vanessa leaned closer, voice low. "You know, the press is dying to know if you're seeing someone again. It wouldn't hurt to give them a story, Adrian. Someone new, someone." Her eyes glittered with suggestion. That's when he saw the woman again, Lila, still seated alone, her mask tilted slightly, eyes lowered. Without thinking, he said softly, "Excuse me a moment," and walked away from Vanessa's laughter like a man escaping a trap. He crossed the ballroom, weaving through chatter and champagne flutes until he reached her. Lila didn't notice him approach until his shadow fell across her. She looked up and froze. Up close, He was even more intimidating. The black mask framed his steel-gray eyes, and his presence was a storm barely contained. "Are you waiting for someone?" he asked, voice low enough to be private. She blinked. No. Just observing, I guess." He glanced over his shoulder. Vanessa was already watching, suspicious. Then, without missing a beat, he leaned closer. So close she caught the faint scent of cedar and whiskey. "Then do me a favor," he whispered. "Pretend you're mine." Lila's heart stumbled. "What?" she breathed, startled. He straightened just enough for others to see him standing beside her, his hand lightly brushing the back of her chair as if he'd claimed her. "Please," he said under his breath. "I'll explain later." Her mind raced. A stranger, a billionaire stranger, was asking her to play pretend in front of hundreds of people. She could say no. She should say no. But the way he said please, the flicker of desperation behind his calm, made her hesitate. And for one fragile, reckless moment, she nodded. Adrian smiled faintly, relief ghosting across his face. He offered her his hand. "Then stand with me." Her fingers trembled as she placed them in his. "Warm. Steady." He guided her toward the center of the room where cameras and curious eyes turned instantly. Vanessa's expression tightened in shock. Adrian pulled Lila closer, an act, and yet, not entirely. "This is Lila," he said to an approaching colleague, his voice even. "My date." Lila's breath caught. But she played along, smiling politely, her pulse drumming in her ears. For the first time that night, people looked at her, not through her, not around her, but at her. And Adrian Cole, the man she'd only known from headlines, squeezed her hand once as if to say, "Thank you." As music swelled again, he leaned close, his voice a whisper. "You did great," he said. Lila looked up at him. "You don't even know me." His eyes softened behind the mask. "Maybe that's why it feels easy." For a heartbeat, the noise faded, and all she could hear was the rhythm of her own heart. A stranger's whisper had rewritten the night. Have you ever been noticed when you least expected it, by someone who changed the way you saw yourself? Tell me in the comments below. The music had shifted, lower, slower, dreamlike, as if the orchestra itself had sensed something changing in the air. Lila stood beside Adrian, still trying to breathe normally while every nerve in her body screamed awareness. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, guiding her through the crowded ballroom as they greeted people who clearly mattered. She didn't know their names, but she smiled, nodded, and prayed she didn't say something wrong. "Beautiful dress," one woman cooed, her diamond necklace catching the chandelier's glow. "You must tell me who designed it." "Oh, Lila began, and Adrian answered smoothly. "A friend of hers. Very exclusive." The lie was effortless. She almost laughed. He really was used to pretending. But when she looked up at him, expecting to see arrogance, she caught something else, a flicker of sadness, or maybe exhaustion, behind his polished smile. He looked like a man performing a role he no longer believed in. And she, quiet, invisible Lila, had somehow become his scene partner. They reached the center of the ballroom where cameras from the press hovered like moths. Adrian drew her closer, lowering his head slightly as if sharing a secret. "You're doing fine," he murmured. Lila swallowed. "What exactly am I doing?" "Helping me survive," he said softly. "That's all." His voice carried the weight of years, not minutes. Then the flashes went off, rapid, blinding. The photographers wanted their shot, Adrian Cole with his new mystery woman. Lila forced a gentle smile, her heart fluttering with nerves and something else she couldn't name. For the first time, people weren't ignoring her, they were noticing her. But it wasn't vanity that made her chest ache, it was the strange warmth of being chosen, even if by accident. Adrian's fingers brushed hers once, subtle, almost accidental, but her breath caught anyway. When the dance music began, he turned toward her. "May I?" She hesitated, eyes wide. "Dance? I'm not exactly." "You'll be fine," he said, offering his hand. The crowd parted as they stepped onto the floor. Lila placed her trembling hand in his, her other resting lightly on his shoulder. His palm was warm, his movements deliberate but gentle. Around them, masked couples swayed and spun, laughter echoing like champagne bubbles. But for Lila, the world blurred into nothing but the rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her fingertips. "You didn't have to choose me," she said quietly, trying not to trip. "There were a dozen women who'd have gladly played pretend for you." He glanced down at her, a faint smile ghosting his lips. "I didn't want them." Her brow furrowed. "Why?" He was silent for a long moment. "Because they would have wanted something in return." Lila blinked up at him. "And you think I don't?" "I think," he said, tightening his hold slightly, "you're the only one here not pretending to be someone else." Her heart stuttered. For a man who'd spent his life surrounded by wealth, he spoke like someone starving for honesty. The song changed, slower now. Lila forgot about the cameras, the crowd, the curious stares. Adrian's mask glinted in the dim light, half shadowing his expression. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible over the music. "You remind me of someone I used to know," he said. "Someone you loved?" she asked before she could stop herself. His gaze darkened, the mask unable to hide the sudden ache there. "Someone I lost." The words hung between them, fragile and heavy. She wanted to ask more, but his expression warned her not to. So she said nothing. She simply danced. Later, as the gala began to wind down, Adrian escorted her toward the balcony overlooking the city. The night air was cool, scented with rain and roses from the garden below. For the first time since he'd approached her, they were alone. Lila leaned against the railing, the skyline glittering behind her. "So," she said softly, "was I convincing enough as your pretend date?" He smiled, faintly. "More than convincing. I think you just made half the city jealous." She laughed quietly, a sound that felt like relief. "Glad I could be of service." "You're not like the others," he said. "You don't perform." "Maybe because I don't know how." He studied her for a long moment. "Don't learn. The world has enough actors." There was sincerity in his tone that disarmed her. For a man with everything, he looked strangely lost. "Can I ask you something?" she ventured. He nodded. "Why did you really need someone to pretend tonight?" His eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, "Because sometimes it's easier to face a room full of people when you're not alone." The simplicity of it hit her like a pulse of recognition. She understood that kind of loneliness, the kind that feels louder in a crowd. Inside, the last song began to play. "Should I keep pretending?" she asked gently, half teasing, half serious. Adrian's lips curved. "Only if you want to." She smiled, shaking her head. "You're a strange man, Mr. Cole." "Stranger than you think," he murmured. Their eyes locked for a long, unguarded second. Then someone called his name from inside, shattering the spell. He straightened, stepping back slightly. "Thank you, Lila," he said. "For tonight." She tried to match his composure. "You're welcome. I hope your story sells." "It already did," he said quietly, glancing once more at her before turning away. "I just didn't expect to believe it." And then he was gone, disappearing back into the ballroom, leaving her alone on the balcony with her heart still catching up to what had just happened. When she finally left the mansion, the city had grown quiet. She walked toward the waiting cab, heels clicking softly on the pavement, her mind replaying every moment, the whisper, the dance, the look in his eyes. Maybe it was just a fantasy. Maybe it meant nothing. But deep down, beneath logic and caution, something inside her whispered back the same words he had said. "Pretend you're mine." And for the first time in years, she wanted to. Do you think love can begin as a lie? Or do you believe truth must come first? I'd love to know what your heart says in the comments. The morning light crept through the slits in Lila's curtains, thin and cold. She blinked awake, unsure for a moment if the previous night had been a dream. The masked stranger. The dance. The whisper. She sat up slowly, the cheap bedsheets tangled around her legs. Reality came flooding back, the damp smell of her one-room apartment, the sound of her neighbor's TV through the thin wall, the faint ache in her feet from borrowed heels. Last night belonged to another world. This morning, she was back in hers. She laughed softly at herself. "Pretend you're mine," she whispered into the empty room, shaking her head. What a line. But when she closed her eyes, she could still feel the echo of his hand against her back, steady and sure. The way his voice softened when he said her name, as if he'd known it forever. It shouldn't have mattered. And yet, it did. Across the city, Adrian Cole stood before the mirror in his penthouse, tie loosened, eyes red from lack of sleep. The reflection that stared back at him was everything the world believed him to be: sharp, controlled, untouchable. But beneath the expensive suit, the armor felt heavier than usual. He remembered her eyes, the way they hadn't widened in awe or calculation. The way she looked at him as though she saw through the name, not because of it. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Cole, the board meeting starts in 10. Adrian straightened his collar. "I'll be there." He grabbed his phone and paused, thumb hovering over the contact list. He hadn't even asked for her number. He didn't know her last name. Just Lila. And somehow, that was the name replaying in his mind louder than any business deal or investor pitch he had that morning. The next few days passed in a blur for both of them. For Lila, it was back to sketching at the cafe between serving tables. Customers came and went, faces blending together, conversations about deadlines and dates swirling around her like static. But sometimes she'd glance at the door, half expecting him to walk in, half praying he wouldn't. When her friend Marcy plopped into a seat across from her during break, she eyed Lila curiously. "You've been smiling to yourself all week," Marcy teased. "Who is he?" Lila rolled her eyes, though her cheeks warmed. "No one. Just a stranger from a party." "A Halloween party?" Marcy's grin widened. "Girl, don't tell me you pulled a masked billionaire." "Stop," Lila groaned, laughing. "It wasn't like that. He just..." She hesitated. How could she explain it? "He just needed someone to pretend for a night." Marcy blinked. "Pretend?" "Yeah," Lila said quietly, tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "And for some reason, he chose me." Marcy leaned forward. "Did you like him?" Lila looked out the window. The city glimmered beyond the glass, alive and indifferent. "Yes," she admitted softly. "And that's the problem." That same night, Adrian sat in his car outside his own event, another meaningless gala, another round of handshakes and false smiles. But all he could think about was her laugh. Her honesty. He hadn't planned on seeing her again. He shouldn't. But pretending to move on was harder than pretending to love. He opened the door to step out, and stopped. Across the street, beneath the soft golden glow of a cafe sign, he saw her. Through the window. Alone. Sketching. Her hair was loose this time, her expression peaceful, completely unaware that she was being watched. Something inside him eased. Then tightened. He could walk away. Forget the whisper. Forget the feeling. Or he could walk in. Adrian pushed the door open, the bell above it chiming softly. Lila didn't look up right away. "We're closing in 10. Then she froze. He was there. No mask, no suit, just a man in a dark coat, eyes that looked like memories. "Adrian." He smiled faintly. "You remember my name." "I tried not to," she said before she could stop herself. He laughed quietly, and the sound wrapped around her like warmth. "I don't usually interrupt artists at work, but..." His gaze dropped to the sketchpad. "Is that me?" Lila flushed, snapping it shut. "No. It's, just a random." He raised a brow. "Random man with the same jawline?" She sighed, shaking her head. "What are you doing here?" "I told myself I wouldn't come." he admitted. But that was before I realized how bad I am at keeping promises. Lila crossed her arms, half smiling despite herself. You're not supposed to chase after pretend dates, you know. I know, he said quietly. But I also know what it felt like when you stopped pretending. Her pulse quickened. That wasn't real. Wasn't it? His voice softened. Because it felt real to me. She looked away, torn between logic and longing. You're used to getting what you want, Adrian. I'm not something you can just. I don't want something, he interrupted. I want someone. The silence between them stretched, fragile and trembling. Then, almost as if breaking a spell, she whispered, I don't even know who you really are. Adrian smiled sadly. Neither do I. For a long time, neither spoke. The world outside moved on, cars passing, lights flickering, rain beginning to fall. Finally, Lila exhaled. You shouldn't be here. Probably not, he said. But if I leave now, I'll spend the night wishing I'd stayed. She hesitated. Then, softly, then stay. He did. They sat together in that small cafe as the rain tapped the windows, saying little, needing even less. Neither of them knew where this would lead. All they knew was that the pretending had stopped, and that was somehow even more terrifying. Have you ever met someone who felt like a déjà vu, familiar, but you couldn't explain why? The storm that had started as a drizzle outside the cafe turned into a full downpour, wind lashing at the glass as thunder rolled across the sky. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely, plunging the small cafe into a warm half-darkness lit only by street lamps and candlelight from the counter. Great, Lila muttered, peering toward the window. Looks like you're stuck here until it clears up. Adrian glanced at the rain outside, then at her. Guess I'm not the only one who's bad at keeping promises. She gave him a mock glare, but her lips curved upward despite herself. You really have a talent for showing up at the wrong time. I'd argue it's exactly the right time. Lila rolled her eyes and moved to lock the cafe doors, flipping the sign to closed. If you're staying, you'll have to earn your keep. No free rides, Mr. Billionaire. He smiled, loosening his coat. Fine. I can wash dishes, brew coffee, or provide unsolicited business advice. Please don't do the last one. He chuckled softly, taking off his jacket and hanging it over a chair. The gesture felt disarmingly domestic, like he'd done it 100 times before, like he belonged there. She went behind the counter to tidy up, stealing occasional glances at him. He was different tonight, not the immaculate man from the mansion, not the polished name from headlines. There was a quiet ease in the way he leaned against the counter, sleeves rolled up, watching her like she was the only thing grounding him. The storm raged outside, but inside, something gentle began to unfold. Tell me something true, he said suddenly, breaking the silence. Lila blinked. What? He tilted his head, eyes glinting with curiosity. Last time we met, we were pretending. Let's try something real. She hesitated, drying a cup with deliberate care. Something true. I'm terrified of crowds. He raised a brow. You went to a mansion full of people for a Halloween party. Exactly, she said. It was my friend's idea. She thought it would fix me. He smiled faintly. Did it? She met his eyes. No. But someone there did make me forget I was scared for a little while. The air thickened. He nodded slowly, his voice quieter. My turn, then. Something true. Lila waited. I wasn't supposed to be at that party either, Adrian confessed. It was an investor's event. I was there out of obligation. His jaw tightened. Someone I used to know loved Halloween. After she died, I stopped celebrating anything. Until that night. Lila's heart softened. I'm sorry, she said gently. He shook his head. Don't be. You were the first person to make it feel like maybe it was okay to show up again. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was full, rich with shared understanding. A flash of lightning illuminated the cafe, followed by thunder so loud it made the windows tremble. Lila jumped slightly, and Adrian's hand instinctively reached out, steadying her. Their eyes met, close, too close. His fingers lingered a moment longer than they should have, his warmth spreading through her. "You okay?" he asked softly. "Yeah," she breathed. Just startled. He didn't move his hand. "You don't have to be afraid. Of storms." He shook his head. "Of being seen." The words hit deeper than he intended. Lila's throat tightened. "You talk like you've spent a lot of time hiding, too." He smiled wryly. "You have no idea." As the storm grew louder, Lila made them both coffee. She set his cup down in front of him, then sat across the table, legs tucked beneath her. For a long while, they talked, about little things at first. Childhood memories. Books they loved. The quiet moments that shaped them. Then the conversation drifted to heavier truths, how she'd once dreamed of being an illustrator but gave up after her father's death, and how Adrian built his company from nothing, losing himself in the process. "It's strange," Lila murmured, stirring her drink. "We only met twice, but it feels like I've known you longer." "Maybe we have," he said softly. "In another life." She laughed under her breath. "You don't even believe in that." He smiled. "I didn't. Until now." When the storm finally began to ease, the clock read nearly midnight. Lila leaned her chin on her hand, gazing at him. "It's late. You should probably go before the roads flood." He hesitated, reluctant to leave. "Do you want me to?" She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know." Adrian exhaled slowly. "Neither do I." For a heartbeat, the world stilled. Then the lights flickered back on, flooding the cafe in brightness. The sudden reality between them felt raw and too exposed. Lila stood, brushing invisible crumbs from the counter. "I should clean up." He got up too. "Let me help." Their hands brushed as they reached for the same cup, a soft, electric jolt between them. She froze. He didn't pull away. For a second, the storm outside seemed to return, rumbling inside both of them. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "Why does this feel dangerous?" Adrian's eyes searched hers. "Because it's real." He walked her to her door that night, umbrella in hand, the street still glistening from the rain. They stood there under the dim light, neither wanting to say goodbye. When she finally turned the key, she looked up at him. "Thank you for staying." He smiled faintly. "Thank you for letting me." The night hummed with unspoken words. He leaned in slightly, close enough that she could feel his breath, but not close enough to cross the line. "Good night, Lila," he murmured. "Good night, Adrian." He walked away into the wet, shimmering dark. She closed the door, heart thundering, and leaned against it with a trembling smile. Somewhere deep inside, she already knew, pretending was never going to be enough again. If someone unexpected broke through your walls when you least wanted to feel, would you let them in, or shut them out? The next morning, sunlight broke over the city like nothing had changed, except everything had. Lila went about her routine, but her mind wasn't hers anymore. Every cup of coffee, every order she took, every laugh from a customer, all of it blurred under the weight of one thought, him. Adrian Cole. She shouldn't be thinking about him. She wasn't built for his world, and he wasn't meant to fit in hers. But fate, as it often does, decided to meddle. That afternoon, her manager called her into the back room. "Lila," he said, "someone's interested in sponsoring our art corner. They want local artists to display their sketches here. I recommended you." Her eyes widened. "You did." He grinned. "Yeah. Said you've got a good eye for emotion. The sponsors team is coming in for a preview this evening. You should be here." Her heart leapt. "Who's the sponsor?" He looked down at the email. "A company called Cole Holdings. Some big CEO guy." Lila froze. "Everything okay?" She forced a smile. "Yeah. Just surprised. By 7 that evening, she'd set up her sketches, soft pencil portraits, moments of human emotion captured in fragile lines, a mother laughing, a child's wonder, a stranger lost in thought. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the final frame. Then she felt a shift in the air. He was there. Adrian walked in surrounded by 2 assistants, but his eyes found hers instantly. Time slowed. "Miss Bennet," one assistant said politely, "thank you for showcasing your work." Lila managed a nod, heart racing. Adrian's expression was unreadable, somewhere between surprise and something deeper. When his team moved to review other displays, he lingered near her. "You knew," she whispered when they were alone. He shook his head. "I didn't. I swear. I only learned it this morning." Her voice was low. "So this is just coincidence?" He smiled faintly. "Or the universe showing off?" As his team discussed contracts with the manager, Adrian wandered the small gallery corner. He paused before a sketch that made him go still, a portrait of a woman with laughing eyes and wind-tousled hair. "That one's called Elena," Lila said quietly behind him. "She was my mother." He turned to her, eyes softening. "She looks kind." "She was," Lila murmured. "She used to say we wear masks not to hide who we are, but to test who's willing to look beneath them." Adrian's throat tightened. He stared at the drawing again, remembering the words his late sister used to say, eerily similar ones. "What happened to her?" he asked gently. Lila's smile faltered. "She died when I was 15. Car accident. After that, I stopped drawing for a long time. Art felt like a language that hurt to speak." Adrian's gaze softened. "And now," she said, "it's how I remember her." For a moment, silence said everything words couldn't. But then, Adrian's assistant returned, handing him a folder. "We'll finalize the paperwork tomorrow, sir." Lila blinked. "Tomorrow?" Adrian hesitated, then sighed. "I might not be the one coming back. There's a conflict I have to handle personally." She frowned. "Conflict?" He gave a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's just say, my past doesn't like staying buried." She studied him carefully. "You mean, someone?" He exhaled. "Someone, yes. My ex-fiancée." The words hit like a sudden chill. "She's the one who—" He nodded slowly. "We were together 3 years. She left when a scandal broke around my company. She told reporters I used her name to hide fraud that wasn't even mine. It nearly destroyed everything." Lila's heart twisted. "That's why you hate being seen." He met her eyes. "And that's why I shouldn't have come back into your life. People close to me get burned." She stepped closer, voice trembling. "Then maybe it's time you stopped standing so close to the fire alone." He looked at her like she'd said something sacred. "You shouldn't care this much." "Too late," she said softly. The vulnerability in her voice shattered something inside him. Later that night, after his team left, Adrian stayed behind. The cafe was empty again, lights dimmed. Lila was locking up when he spoke. "There's something else you should know." She paused, keys in hand. "What?" He hesitated, the mask slipping. "The woman who left me, her father was my business partner. He embezzled millions and framed me for it. I spent 2 years cleaning up his mess while she watched from the sidelines." Her breath caught. "You didn't deserve that." He gave a broken laugh. "Deserve doesn't matter in my world. Only power." Lila's voice softened. "Then maybe it's time to build a new world." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, believed that maybe he could. The moment lingered, heavy, tender, electric. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Lila," he murmured, "you make me feel like I can breathe again." Her heart hammered. "And you make me feel seen." He leaned closer, almost touching her, their breaths mingling in the charged silence. But before either could close the gap, his phone buzzed. He stepped back, answering it. His expression darkened. "Now," he said into the phone. "Fine. I'll handle it." When he hung up, his voice was low. "I have to go." "What happened?" "An emergency at the company." And his jaw tightened. "My ex is back in town. She's threatening to go public with new claims." Lila's heart sank. "Adrian." He touched her hand, briefly. "I'll fix it. I just don't want you caught in the fallout." Then he was gone. The door closed and Lila stood there, heart full of questions, the faint scent of rain still in the air. She whispered to the empty cafe, "Why does love always leave when it starts to feel real?" Outside, the city lights flickered like old ghosts, and the sound of thunder rolled once more. Would you risk your heart for someone whose world could break yours, or walk away before it's too late? Rain fell in silver sheets over the city that night. Lila sat by her window, sketchbook open, but her pencil barely moved. Every few seconds she'd look at her phone, hoping, foolishly, that Adrian would text. He didn't. She told herself he was busy, that billionaires didn't have the luxury of simply disappearing into silence. But in the quiet of her apartment, the doubt whispered louder than logic. Then, a knock. Soft. Hesitant. Her heart jumped. When she opened the door, he was there. Soaked, exhausted, eyes hollow, but there. "Adrian." He gave a weak smile. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside wordlessly. He walked in, water dripping from his coat, carrying the weight of 1,000 untold things. "Rough night?" she asked softly. He laughed bitterly. "That's one way to put it." She handed him a towel. He took it, rubbing at his hair, the scent of rain and danger clinging to him. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked, settling on the couch. He hesitated, then sank beside her. "She showed up at my office. My ex Claire." Lila's pulse quickened. "She said she's writing a tell-all book, everything about us, the company, my family. Lies, all of it. But in my world, perception is truth." Lila frowned. "Can't you sue her?" "I could. But it would make headlines. And once that happens, I lose control of the narrative." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "It's like playing chess with ghosts. Every move I make, they've already predicted." Lila studied him, not the billionaire, not the mask, but the man beneath. Broken, tired, trying. "Maybe," she said softly, "you don't need to play their game anymore." He looked at her, eyes tired but curious. "Then what do I do? Write your own rules." He smiled faintly. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," she said, her voice a whisper. "But you're not alone anymore." For a long moment, they sat there in the hush of the rain, her presence the only calm he'd known in months. Later she made tea. He sat on the couch, watching her move about the small kitchen with quiet fascination, as though the world itself had shrunk to fit inside her tiny apartment. "You live simply," he said. She smiled over her shoulder. "Some would call it barely." He chuckled. "No. It's peaceful." She handed him a cup. "Peace is underrated." Their fingers brushed as he took it, a spark passing between them, the kind that demanded no words. She sat beside him again, closer this time. "You know," she said, voice soft. "The night at the party. I thought you were just another man playing pretend." He looked at her. "And now?" "Now," she said, meeting his gaze. "I think maybe you're the only one who was ever real." Something shifted then, in the air, in him. He reached out, brushing her cheek with the back of his fingers. "Lila," he whispered. Her breath caught. "Don't," she murmured. "Not unless you mean it." He smiled, that quiet, pained smile that spoke of years of walls cracking open. "I've never meant anything more." And then, he kissed her. Slow, uncertain at first, like a man learning how to feel again. Then deeper, stronger, years of restraint breaking under the weight of one woman's tenderness. When they finally pulled apart, both were trembling. "I'm scared," she admitted softly, forehead resting against his. "Of me. Of this. Of what it means." He exhaled. "So am I." He looked away, voice dropping to a whisper. "You make me want to be better. But I don't know if I can be. The things I've done. The things I've had to do to survive." She took his hand. "Whatever your past is, it doesn't scare me. But shutting me out will." He turned back to her, eyes glistening. "You have no idea what you're getting into." "Then tell me," she said, "so I can decide for myself." He stood, pacing. "My company isn't clean, Lila. I've spent years rebuilding what others tried to destroy. I've had to lie, manipulate, threaten, to protect what was left." She swallowed. "And you hate yourself for it." He froze, then nodded. "Yes. Then that's the part of you I trust most," she said gently. "Because you still feel it." For a moment, he couldn't speak. He just looked at her, really looked, like a man realizing the world hadn't ended yet. The storm outside had softened into drizzle. They ended up wrapped in a blanket, her head on his shoulder, silence speaking where words failed. He traced idle circles on her hand. "You know, when I first saw you that night, I thought you were a ghost." She laughed quietly. "A ghost?" "Yeah," he said. "Because you looked like everything I'd stopped believing was real." She smiled sadly. "And you looked like trouble." "Was I wrong?" he teased. "Not yet." Their laughter melted into quiet again. Hours passed, and dawn crept in, a pale light through the curtains. Adrian had fallen asleep, his hand still holding hers. Lila watched him, memorizing the softness on his face when the mask fell away. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for once, that didn't scare her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't waiting for the world to fall apart. But outside her window, a black car idled on the street below. Inside, a woman sat watching, sleek hair, sharp smile, eyes that burned with quiet vengeance. Claire. She lifted her phone, snapped a photo of the window, of them. "Perfect," she murmured. "Let's see how long your little fairy tale lasts, Adrian. Would you let love in if you knew it came with danger, or push it away to stay safe?" Morning light painted the city gold, but inside Lila's apartment, it felt cold. Adrian's phone buzzed again and again as he stood near the window, shirt half-buttoned, brows drawn tight. Lila watched him, coffee cup trembling slightly in her hand. "You've been getting calls since 5. What's going on?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Something broke this morning. Online." "What do you mean?" He turned the phone toward her. The screen glowed with a headline splashed across every major site. "Billionaire Adrian Cole caught in scandal. Secret lover revealed amidst fraud investigation." Below it, a grainy photo of him in her apartment window, his arm around her as they slept. Lila's blood ran cold. "Adrian." He set the phone down like it burned. "It's Claire. She must have leaked this. She knew exactly how to destroy me." Her voice trembled. "She followed you here?" He nodded grimly. "She wants the world to think I've moved on while my company is under federal review. That I used you as a distraction, as another headline to bury the truth." Lila's stomach twisted. "But that's not true." He looked at her, eyes dark with guilt. "Doesn't matter. In my world, truth doesn't win. Power does." Within hours, the cafe where Lila worked was surrounded by reporters. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. "Miss Bennett, how long have you been seeing Mr. Cole? Were you aware of his investigation? Are you being paid for your silence?" She froze, unable to move. Every word she said could destroy him, or her. Her manager rushed out. "Lila, you need to go home. It's chaos here." She nodded numbly and slipped through the back door, heart hammering. Her phone buzzed, Adrian calling. She answered, voice shaking. "They're everywhere." "I know," he said. "I'm sending a car." You need to stay somewhere safe. They'll tear you apart if you stay there. Adrian. But before she could say more, the line cut. The car arrived 20 minutes later. Black, tinted windows, the kind that screamed power. The driver handed her an envelope. Mr. Cole said you should read this on the way. She opened it, heart sinking as she saw the letter inside. Lila, if you're reading this, I'm already at a press conference. I'm going to take the blame for everything. If I say it was all a mistake, they'll move on from you. Don't call. Don't try to fix it. The more you're tied to me, the harder they'll come for you. Please, stay away, for your own safety. Adrian. Tears blurred the words. She crumpled the note in her hand. No, she whispered. You don't get to protect me by destroying yourself. The next scene unfolded like a nightmare broadcast live. Adrian stood at the podium, camera flashes painting him in harsh white light. Mr. Cole, a reporter shouted, what do you have to say about the allegations that you used insider connections to hide your assets? He straightened. Every accusation will be addressed through the proper channels. But one thing I won't deny, I made mistakes. The crowd buzzed. He continued, voice calm but distant. I got involved with someone I shouldn't have. She's not responsible for any of this. Leave her out of it. Lila watched from a cafe TV miles away, hand over her mouth. His voice cracked slightly when he said her name. Miss Bennett is an innocent woman. I failed her, and for that, I'm sorry. Her heart shattered. She turned to the barista behind the counter. Turn it off, she whispered. Please. Hours later, she stormed into his penthouse. Security tried to stop her, but Adrian waved them off. Lila, he said, surprised. You shouldn't be here. She stood before him, tears cutting down her face. You think you can just end it with a press conference? He sighed. I told you, this is for your safety. No, she snapped. This is you running. His jaw clenched. You don't understand the game I'm playing. Then explain it to me, she shouted. Because right now, all I see is a man hiding behind excuses. He turned away. Claire's father has ties to half the board of my company. She's blackmailing me, Lila. If I fight back, she'll destroy everything, and drag you down too. She stepped closer. You think I care about your empire? I care about you. But if you keep lying to yourself, there won't be anything left worth saving. He met her gaze, the wall finally cracking. You don't know what I've done to survive. Then tell me, she said, voice breaking. Stop protecting me from a truth that's already burning us both. He exhaled shakily. Claire's father stole millions from our foundation, money meant for children's hospitals. I found out and tried to expose him. In return, he made sure the evidence disappeared, and I took the blame. Lila's eyes widened. So you've been fighting this alone all this time? He nodded. I didn't want anyone else hurt. But Claire, she's ruthless. She won't stop until I'm ruined. Lila's hand trembled as she touched his cheek. Then we fight her. Together. He shook his head. You don't belong in this darkness, Lila. Maybe not, she said fiercely. But neither do you. The silence that followed was heavy. Two souls standing on the edge of everything they feared and everything they wanted. Then his phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number flashed across the screen. You think you can outplay me? Watch tonight's news. See. He looked up, dread washing over his face. She's going to release something else. What could she possibly have left? Lila asked. He didn't answer. Instead, his expression darkened. Something worse than lies. The truth. That evening, the news stations exploded with another headline. Cole Foundation funds missing. CEO implicated in cover-up. Adrian's world shattered overnight. Investors pulled out, board members demanded his resignation, and social media turned his name into poison. Lila watched helplessly as his empire collapsed in real time. When she finally reached him again, he was sitting in the dark, glass of whiskey untouched, phone buzzing non-stop. "It's over," he said quietly. "Everything I built, gone." She knelt beside him. "You still have you." He laughed bitterly. "No, Lila. You don't understand. They froze my accounts. I can't even pay my own staff. And tomorrow, the authorities are coming for me." Her heart twisted. "Then run. Come with me. Leave it all behind." He looked at her, almost smiling. "You think it's that easy? I think love makes impossible things possible." For a fleeting second, he almost believed her. Then, a knock at the door. Two men in suits. Badges glinting in the light. "Mr. Adrian Cole?" He straightened slowly. "Yes. You're under investigation for financial misconduct. You'll need to come with us." Lila gasped. "Wait, he's innocent." But they were already cuffing him. He looked back at her as they led him away, eyes full of everything he couldn't say. "Stay safe," he whispered. Then the door closed. And just like that, he was gone. Lila sank to the floor, shaking, surrounded by the echo of everything they'd built. Laughter, hope, warmth, now replaced by silence. But beneath the heartbreak, something fierce began to rise. She wiped her tears, grabbed her sketchbook, and whispered, "If the world won't fight for you, Adrian, then I will." Would you stand by the one you love when the world calls them guilty, or walk away to protect your heart? The city was quieter that night, as if the chaos that had swallowed their lives had finally paused to breathe. Rain shimmered across the streets, soft and rhythmic, washing over headlines plastered with Adrian's name. Inside her small apartment, Lila sat before a canvas she couldn't bring herself to touch. For days, she hadn't painted a thing. On the news, his face flashed again, mugshot style, hollow-eyed. Billionaire CEO Adrian Cole released on bail following ongoing fraud allegations. Her chest ached. He looked nothing like the man who once whispered, "Pretend you're mine." She muted the TV. The silence pressed in, thick with unsaid things. She opened her sketchbook, flipping through pages filled with him, quick pencil strokes of his face, his hands, the curve of his smile. Then her eyes landed on one drawing she didn't remember making. Adrian asleep on her couch, a faint smile on his lips, sunlight spilling over him. The date in the corner read October 31st, the night they met. Lila pressed her fingers to the page, tears falling freely now. "Why did you have to love me like that?" she whispered. "And then walk away?" Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "He doesn't deserve your loyalty. He used you. Move on." She knew that number. Claire. Lila's jaw tightened. "You picked the wrong girl to break." Across the city, Adrian sat in his lawyer's office, surrounded by piles of evidence. Photos, contracts, financial records, all twisted into accusations. He hadn't slept in 2 days. "Adrian," his lawyer said softly, "Claire's father has more leverage than we thought. If we can't find proof of the missing funds transfer, you'll lose everything. Even your charity license." Adrian's gaze drifted to the window. The same rain tapping the glass. The same city that once bowed to his name, now whispering in judgment. He thought of Lila, her laugh, her stubbornness, her courage. Then, the image of her crying as he was taken away. He whispered to himself, "I lost her trying to save her." A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. The guard handed him a small envelope. From a Miss Bennet. Adrian's breath caught. He opened it slowly. Inside, a single sheet of paper, her handwriting looping across it in dark ink. "I'm done letting other people write your story, Adrian. Meet me at the studio tonight. If you still want to fight, we fight together." He closed his eyes, exhaling for what felt like the first time in days. When he arrived at her art studio, the lights were dim, candles flickering along the walls. Canvases leaned against every surface, some half-finished, others torn. In the center stood Lila, wearing a paint-splattered sweater and determination in her eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly, not turning. He stepped closer. "You told me to come. I told you to fight, not to run." Adrian looked at her, really looked at her. The exhaustion, the fear, the quiet strength she carried like armor. "I tried to protect you," he murmured. "By destroying yourself," she shot back. "By letting Claire control the story?" He didn't answer. So she picked up a file from the table and handed it to him. "I found this in the Foundation's old archives. A digital trail, small transfers leading to an offshore account. Guess who owns it?" His eyes widened. "Claire's father." Lila nodded. "He's been laundering money through the same charities you built. And Claire's been covering for him." He looked at her in disbelief. "You did this alone?" She shrugged faintly. "You taught me what to look for. I just connected the dots." He laughed, the first real laugh in days. "You're incredible." She met his eyes. "No. I'm angry. Angry that you thought I was too fragile to stand by you." Adrian stepped closer, guilt in his eyes. "I was terrified of losing you. Then stop pushing me away every time life gets hard." Their silence was thick, charged. He reached for her hand, but she hesitated, fingers trembling. "If we do this," she said quietly, "we do it as equals. No lies. No shields." He nodded. "No masks." They sat side by side, piecing together the evidence, screenshots, transfers, timestamps, the truth coming alive between them. Every document they added to the file was a small act of defiance. When they finished, Lila looked up. "We have enough to expose them. But it'll mean going public. Your face, my name. They'll come after us." Adrian leaned back. "Then we give them something bigger to talk about, the truth." For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain outside slowed, replaced by quiet thunder. Lila turned to him, eyes glassy but firm. "Are you ready?" He nodded slowly. "For once. I think I am." As they stood, gathering the files, Lila caught her reflection in the mirror, her mask from the Halloween party hanging nearby on a nail. She picked it up, turning it over in her hands. "Funny," she said. "The night we met, I thought pretending was the only way to survive." Adrian smiled softly. "And now? Now I want everything real, even if it hurts." He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel his breath. Then no more pretending. Their foreheads touched, and for a heartbeat, the world felt right again. No lies. No masks. Just truth. But before their lips met, she whispered, "Tomorrow. After we win." He smiled. "Then tomorrow it is." As he left the studio that night, Adrian turned back at the door. Lila stood there, candlelight painting gold across her face, file clutched against her chest. "Thank you," he said softly. She smiled faintly. "Don't thank me yet. Just keep your promise." And when the door closed, the city lights flickered outside, a silent vow between two souls who'd finally chosen each other, not out of desperation or fantasy, but out of truth. When life gives you one last chance to make things right, do you choose love or fear? The next morning, the world felt like it was holding its breath. Gray skies hung over the city as if the heavens themselves were waiting for something to break. Lila stood beside Adrian in the courthouse hallway, the file of evidence clutched to her chest. Neither spoke for a long time. He was calm, too calm, the kind of stillness that came when a man had already decided what he was willing to lose. She glanced up at him. "Are you scared?" Adrian smiled faintly. "Terrified." She gave a small nod. "Good. It means you still care." Inside the courtroom, flashes from cameras burned like lightning. Reporters whispered. Claire sat at the front with her father, her perfect poise cracked by the faintest twitch in her jaw. The judge entered. The room quieted. Adrian rose. "Your Honor," he said, voice steady, "I request to submit new evidence." Documents showing misappropriation of funds from the Cole Foundation by Richard Hale and his daughter, Claire Hale. A ripple of shock spread through the room. Claire shot up. "That's a lie." Lila stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "No. It's the truth. And here's the proof." She handed the folder to the bailiff. Inside, transaction logs, emails, and a signed witness statement from a former accountant who'd come forward after Lila's outreach. The judge skimmed the papers, eyes narrowing. Then he looked at Richard Hale. "Mr. Hale, would you care to explain these transfers?" The older man stammered, color draining from his face. Claire grabbed his arm, whispering harshly. But it was too late. Every camera caught the moment her father looked at her and said, "It was her idea." Headlines erupted within hours. Cole Foundation scandal. Claire Hale implicated in fraud scheme. Adrian Cole cleared of charges after shocking evidence revealed. By sunset, the world that once hunted him had turned its gaze on someone else. But Adrian wasn't celebrating. He stood at the edge of the courthouse steps, rain misting lightly against his face. Reporters called his name, begged for quotes, but he said nothing. Lila watched him from a few feet away, pride and sadness intertwined in her chest. He turned to her, voice low. "We did it." She smiled softly. "You did." He shook his head. "No, Lila. I wouldn't have made it without you." Her eyes shimmered. "That's the thing about masks, Adrian. Eventually, the truth underneath has to breathe." A week later, the world had moved on again. The noise faded. The headlines shifted. But some things, once broken, didn't snap back into place. They evolved. Lila returned to her studio, this time full of light and paint and music. She'd been offered an art residency, the kind of dream she'd once been too afraid to chase. Adrian arrived one last time, standing quietly in the doorway. She smiled when she saw him. "I wondered if you'd come." "I had to," he said. "Before I go." "Go." He nodded. "I'm leaving the city. Selling what's left of the company. There's a school rebuilding project in Kenya I want to fund, quietly, this time." Her heart ached, but she smiled. "That sounds right." He walked closer, tracing the edge of a paint-smeared canvas. "You were my mirror, Lila. You showed me what I looked like when I wasn't pretending." Tears welled in her eyes. "And you made me believe that love isn't something to hide from." They stood in silence, both knowing what this was, not an ending, but a release. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You once said pretending helped you survive. I think you've learned how to live now." She laughed softly through tears. "And you? Have you?" He smiled, the kind of smile that carried peace. "I'm getting there." As he turned to leave, Lila called after him. "Adrian." He paused at the door. She took a breath. "That night, at the party, when you whispered, 'Pretend you're mine,' did you mean it?" He looked at her for a long, quiet moment. Then his voice came, soft as the rain outside. "I meant every word. I just didn't know then that I was yours, too." And with that, he left, into the light drizzle, into a city that finally forgave him. Lila stood at the window, watching until he vanished from sight. Then she turned back to her canvas and picked up her brush. Across a clean stretch of white, she painted two silhouettes beneath a chandelier, one masked, one unmasked, reaching for each other but not quite touching. She signed it quietly, "Pretend you're mine." Weeks later, the painting hung in a gallery downtown. Strangers stopped to stare, drawn to its ache, its honesty, its haunting beauty. No one knew the story behind it. But Lila did. She smiled as she overheard a couple whispering nearby. "Do you think they ever found each other again?" Lila just smiled. "Maybe they didn't need to. Do you believe some loves are meant to change us, not stay with us? What would you have done if you were Lila? Share your thoughts below. Your story might help someone else find their courage.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.